So after studying this module, you should be able to understand the concept of school counseling, know the historical development of counseling in schools, know about the contribution of American School Counseling Association ASCA in the development of school counseling, learn the various counseling techniques effective in school setting, and understand the implications of SCCT theory in school counseling. Education is looked upon not only as a means of personal advancement, but it is also valued as an important fundamental asset to the society. Hence, the expectations from education are varied and differ for different people. Pupils expect to find gainful employment and to realize their own as well as parents' aspirations. Parents and teachers expect intellectual, moral and social development of young members of the society. Society expects to get an educated, enlightened and law-abiding citizen. With every growing complexity of civilization and increasing pace of life, there is a growing need to equip the youth to meet the challenges of life in the future. For this, education is an indispensable part of life. In order to meet the varied expectations, students often find themselves under a lot of stress, which results in their poor performance. More than 50 years of research has concluded that in school environments, counseling interventions have a substantial impact on the students' educational and personal development. In fact, research has indicated that school counselors make a positive difference in the children's lives and in educational environments. School counselors and comprehensive guidance and counseling programs help children and adolescents become better adjusted both academically and developmentally. The benefits for the students as given by Lapin, Gisbers, Petrosky 2001 can be stated as feeling safer, improving relationships with teacher, understanding the relevance of education to their futures, having fewer problems in schools and earning higher grades. From a historical perspective, counseling psychology developed as a profession in the educational rather than in medical settings. Counseling in the educational context forms a very vital part of educational activities. The field of school counseling involves a wide range of ages, developmental stages, background experiences, and types of problems. Often students at different levels of education have been found to function at levels much below their actual capacities. They have been found to achieve much less than they actually can. The role of counseling psychology is to make a difference to this particular group. Let us now understand the evolution of school counseling. The evolution of school counseling officially began in the early 20th century. However, there are traces of some basic principles of guidance and counseling that can go as far back as the 10th century BC during the times of the ancient Greece and Rome. But the formal interventions of school counseling did not occur till much later. In the USA, school counseling began as a vocational guidance movement with Frank Parsons and Jesse Davis in 1908. From the 1920s, school counseling grew along with the progressive and systematic education in schools. This movement emphasized the moral and the social development of youth on a large scale. Although this movement was resisted initially by some, by the 1950s there were very few who were blind to the need as well as the far-reaching impact of school counseling. The history of school counseling can be broken down into three major eras: the formative era, the transitional era, and the contemporary era. Let us come to the first era, the formative era. The formative era began with the primary focus on the vocational needs of young students. In 1908, Frank Parsons, who is considered to be the father of vocational guidance, published works highlighting the need for a more career-focused counseling programs. One of the main goals of his approach was to help those providing services to the youth to be more effective. This, in turn, helped educators to realize that to be the most effective, they had to start with elementary age children. In 1913, the National Vocational Guidance Association (NVGA) was founded, and after several transitions eventually evolved into the American Counseling Association (ACA). This association worked with the aim of justifying the need for school counselors. By the 1930s, educational guidance began to take over at the forefront in the vocational guidance. School personnel began to look at children with an open and holistic outlook. They used more scientific techniques to gain knowledge about the child and to help them formulate ideas for best development of the child. This in turn led to the need for accountability within the guidance programs. Coming on to the next era, the transitional era. Carl Rogers published two major works, Counseling and Psychotherapy in 1942 and Client-Centered Therapy in 1951, that made key contributions to this era. His ideas helped the transition away from educational guidance, which saw counseling as information from expert to novice, to a more client-centered counseling. This meant that the counselor became less advice giving and the client had more control over the counseling process. In 1953, what is now called as the American School Counseling Association or ASCA was founded and gave credentials, standards and guidelines to school counselors. Later on, in 1958, the National Defense Education Act (NDEA) was passed, which supported major funding, training and resources for school counseling programs. In the early 1960s, the need for a more collective and systematic approach to helping children was felt. This led to all school personnel working together towards their goal of helping the students. In 1966, Dinkmeyer and Myrick shifted the focus of counseling and guidance from multiple unorganized services provided by multiple personnel to a more systematic and comprehensive structure that provided developmentally based school counseling. Coming on to the third era, that is the contemporary era. With the contemporary era came the need for structured evaluation within the school counseling program, which asked for more school accountability on the part of the school counselors. The Education for All Handicapped Children Act in 1975 showed the need for services that were geared towards children with disabilities. This opened a door leading to more duties and roles for a school counselor. They began to be in charge of developing individualized education programs (IEP), running student study teams (SST), and be the mentors for special education teachers. In 1997, ASCA developed national standards to advocate for comprehensive school counseling, which entailed viewing the student from a holistic viewpoint, incorporating their academic, personal and social development. It was not until 2003 that ASA National Model, a framework for school counseling programs, was developed. This framework provided school counselors with the guidelines to become effective and efficient counselors. Well students, now let us come to the ASCA National Model. Over the years, it has been seen that professional school counselors have been expected to perform multiple duties as part of their daily work. Some of these duties match the descriptions set forth by the national standards for school counseling programs, whereas others do not. Many school counselors have to struggle to prove their worth to superintendents, principals, teachers, students and parents who have often misunderstood what they do. In order to deal with this confusion and to focus on what activities school counselors should and should not be involved with, the American School Counseling Association (ASCA) formulated and published a national model for school counseling in 2002. This model defines clearly what a school counselor is and clarifies the role of a school counselor for the public as well as for the professionals. The ASCA model supports the mission of the schools by promoting amongst students academic achievement, career planning and personal and social development. The model accomplishes this through an interlocking of 4 components. The first component, foundations, that is beliefs, philosophy and mission. Second component, delivery system, including guidance, curriculum, individual student planning, responsive services and system approach. The third component, management systems, including agreements, advisories, counseling, use of data, action plans and appropriate use of time. The fourth component, inclusive of accountability related to result reports, school counselor performance standards and program audits. The ASA National Model recommends that school counselors collaborate with parents, students and teachers to focus on the development of all students, not just those who are at high risk or who are high achievers. Furthermore, this model recommends that at least 80% of school counselors' time should be spent in direct contact with students. Inappropriate duties assigned to school counselors should be avoided in favor of appropriate responsibilities. Let us now discuss some inappropriate and appropriate counseling responsibilities and activities of a counselor. Inappropriate activities could be registering and scheduling all new students, administering cognitive aptitude and achievement tests, signing excuses for students who are tardy or absent, performing disciplinary actions, sending home students who are not appropriately dressed, teaching classes when teachers are absent, computing grade point averages, maintaining student records, supervising study halls, clerical record keeping, assisting with duties in the principal's office, working with one student at a time in a therapeutic clinical mode. Inappropriate duties are such. Appropriate duties are designing individual students' academic programs, interpreting cognitive achievement and aptitude tests, counseling students with excessive tardiness or absenteeism, counseling students with disciplinary problems, counseling students about appropriate school dress, collaborating with teachers to present guidance curriculum lessons, analyzing grades point averages in relationship to achievement, interpreting student records, providing teachers with suggestions for better study hall management, ensuring students' records are maintained in accordance with state and federal legislations, assisting the school principal with identifying and resolving students' issues, needs and problems, collaborating with teachers to present proactive, prevention-based, guidance-based curriculum. Let us now understand the role of teachers in counseling. In school settings in India, teachers have been the primary source of guidance. They have often rendered non-professional assistance to pupils, which may be of some help. In the advanced countries, most school systems have accredited counseling programs provided by the personnel on the staff of the school. Now, most schools in India too have professionally trained school psychologists to assist teachers in their work with pupils. The purpose of providing counseling services, in the words of Rogers, is to enhance the personal development and psychological growth toward a socialized maturity of the clients. Arbuckle in 1963 states the following functions of the school counselors in the elementary and secondary schools. Number 1. The counselor helps emotionally disturbed children to arrive at happier and satisfying solutions to their problems. Number 2. The counselor helps children with their academic difficulties. Number 3. The counselor is concerned with the preventive and remedial measures. At the elementary school level, there is a particular stress on the preventive and developmental aspects so that there may be less need for remedial work later on. Number 4. The counselor cooperatively works with the teachers to help them gain a greater understanding of the pupils in their classes. Number 5. The counselor helps parents obtain a better understanding and appreciation of their children. 6. The counselor uses appropriate test devices for diagnosis in counseling purposes. Number 7. The counselor maintains extensive and up-to-date records concerning pupils for whom he is responsible. 8th, the secondary school counselor spends much of his time helping students to make wise decisions regarding college courses or jobs. 9th, the secondary school counselor aids needy students to obtain assistance. And 10th, all school counselors work closely with the other specialized personnel. The nature of responsibilities of the school counselor suggests two major roles: counseling and consulting. The counseling role is when the counselor works directly with students on matters concerning emotional problems, self-understanding, decision-making, educational and vocational planning. The consulting role involves the counselor working with teachers, parents, educational specialists, and administrators on matters involving students, understandings, and student management. Now let us discuss some of the school counseling techniques. Let us come to the first technique, which is the basics. School counselors use techniques that make communications with students easier. Some basic techniques that school counselors use include creating a safe, open, and accepting environment. This helps the students to relax and feel comfortable so as to be able to discuss difficult issues. School counselors also use tools like listening skills. Listening encourages openness and communication as it lets the other person know that the counselor is interested. Some of the techniques of active listening including making eye contact, nodding the head in an understanding manner, and making an unobtrusive verbal acknowledgement of what is being shared. Reflecting what the client is saying will also help the client to know that the counselor has not only heard the client but also understood what is being discussed. Coming on to the second technique is relationship. Establishing a positive rapport and building a strong relationship with students is the key for school counselors. Building relationships with students involves empathy and understanding. The most successful counselors are those who are able to establish trust with students as well as teachers, administrators, and parents. Using humor wherever possible in interactions with students can build relationships further. Humor can break the ice and allows students to be comfortable with the counselor. However, it should be used sparingly and only if it helps in building rapport with the student. The student should not feel being laughed at or mocked through the use of humor. Third technique is understanding the specific issues. It is important for school counselor to have knowledge about the specific types of social issues that can impact students. These issues include stress of the courses being undertaken by the student, peer and parental pressures, problems of dropping out, relationship issues, teen pregnancy, substance abuse, and school violence. Although issues like teen pregnancy are not so common in India yet, the statistics are fast catching up with the West. School counselors who are knowledgeable about the risk factors for these issues can offer both prevention as well as intervention techniques to the students to reduce the risk and the subsequent consequences. For example, when a student with a problem of substance abuse comes to the counselor for help, a knowledgeable school counselor who already has a good relationship with community agencies that can help assist with the student's need for both de-addiction and rehabilitation with the minimum impact on him as a student will be highly effective in helping the student. Proper interventions at appropriate time can prevent dropouts and provide the much needed support for a student in trouble. Fourth is diversity. An understanding of the multicultural issues as well as an awareness of own biases is essential to be able to provide appropriate and successful interventions. He must also display awareness and understanding of how these issues affect students individually and understand intervention strategies that are culturally appropriate. Such counselors allow for cultural issues to come into play but do not assume problems as a result of stereotyping. Coming on to the next topic, that is implications of the SCCT theory for school counselors. To be able to effectively help students plan and implement post-secondary career options, school counselors need to understand the factors that influence high school students' career choices. The social cognitive career theory, that is SCCT, given by Lent, Brown and Hackett in 1994 and revised in 2002, is an important theory to understand that one's background or contextual factors and individual characteristics would influence one's learning experiences and consequently the self-efficacy of the person. The theory emphasizes the interactive influence of contextual factors and person variables on individuals' career development. Keeping this theory in mind, one of the primary tasks of school counselors is to help students understand their individual characteristics, example, gender, self-efficacy, interests and outcome expectations, contextual factors, example, socio-economic background, family and school experiences, and the asset and limitations in each category. It has now been recognized that career counseling is not restricted to specific age, group or levels. The school level, let us discuss first, a systematic and comprehensive school counseling program with a career development component needs to be formulated. School counselors should collaborate with the community agencies and parents to provide a variety of learning experiences to provide students with direct observation and or practical experiences of different occupations which would help them in decision making. At the classroom level, it is important to work with teachers in designing a curriculum that helps students to apply subject content to their career options. This would provide meaningful learning experiences for students and help them to develop self-efficacy related to their career goals. At the individual level, a school counselor should be able to identify students who need more intensive intervention to overcome barriers that hinder their pursuing their desired careers. This can be done through an analysis of the students' individual perceptions of what constitutes barriers or resources for them. After identification of the potential barriers, the counselor needs to help students examine their personal assets, family resources and supportive factors in their environment that can help them overcome the barriers they perceive. Well students, now let us summarize what all we have learnt in this module. First of all, we learned that education is important for both personal and societal advancement. Also, that different people have different expectations from education. Many years of research has shown that counseling interventions in school environment have a substantial impact on students' educational and personal development and adjustment. Looking at the history of counseling, although the evolution of school counseling began at the turn of the 20th century, traces of some basic principles of guidance and counseling go as far back as the 10th century BC. The history of counseling can be broken down into three major eras: the formative era, the transitional era, and the contemporary era. The primary focus of the formative era was on the vocational needs of young students. Carl Rogers' ideas helped the transition away from educational guidance, which saw counseling as information from the expert to the novice, to a more client-centered counseling. With the contemporary era came the need for a structured evaluation within the school counseling program and greater accountability on part of the school counselors. Also, there has often been confusion regarding the role of professional school counselors. To deal with this confusion and clarify the role of a school counselor for both the professional and the public, the American School Counseling Association or ASCA published a national model in 2002. In school settings in India, teachers have been the primary guidance personnel. However, most schools now have professionally trained school psychologists to assist teachers in their work with students. The school counselors have two major roles: the counselor, that is counseling, and consulting. The counseling techniques include basic communication, relationship building, 3. Dealing with specific issues of social and emotional issues, and 4. Understanding multicultural diversity. One important area that has a role for school counselors is that of career counseling. The school counselors need to help students plan effective career options. This includes assessing the students' individual characteristics like gender, self-efficacy, interests and outcome expectations, contextual factors like socioeconomic background, family and school experiences, and the asset and the blocks in each category. A systematic and comprehensive school counselling program that which includes all aspects need to be implemented. This can be done by working together with students, teachers and parents.